On the 19th of February in 1985, the BBC launched the first episode of a serial drama which would help change the face of British television. Created by Julia Smith and Tony Holland, the show attempted to depict the domestic and frequently dramatic goings-on in the East End suburb of Walford, E20. There's been brutality, violence, adultery, murder, and domestic abuse, all within the confines of Britain's most fabulous, famous square. But there's also been some touching moments and unforgettable scenes of comedy and laughter in this microcosm of British life. Now, to celebrate this landmark, Josh talks to the cast and crew, both past and present, to examine the magic behind the drama. So, get out of my pub and put away your little willy as we celebrate 40 years of Eastenders exclusively on Beyond the Title.
So, Harriet, welcome back to Beyond the Title for this special episode celebrating the 40th anniversary of Eastenders. Firstly, what was your first interaction with the show as a viewer?
When it first started, I was absolutely hooked, and every Sunday I would go to friends and we would sit round and have a Sunday lunch and watch all the episodes. You know, they did that every Sunday. They put together all the episodes, and that's what we do. It was absolutely fantastic. There was nothing like it.
Am I right in thinking that your sister was also in the show?
I don't think so, no.
No, okay.
I don't know. She might have done an episode, but I don't think so. You probably know better than I do.
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't hang your hat on it.
No, we'll move on from that one, darling.
So, television drama thrives upon archetypes, and this becomes arguably more prevalent in serial drama. By being landlady of the Vic, you're following in the footsteps of some of the icons of British television, including Anita Dobson, Pam St Clement, and of course Barbara Windsor. Why do you think it's necessary for there to be such a strong matriarch as the centerpiece of the show?
To be this strong, feisty, fearless, funny woman is everything. And we all need one of these landladies in our lives. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been there this long, 40 years of matriarch, amazing, strong women.
So what's the process that you took to make Elaine your own while still maintaining those qualities of the quintessential Queen Vic matriarch?
What makes this show and makes these characters are the creative, collaborative writers, producers, storyline creators. It is nothing without this ensemble of ideas. And what is written is thrilling, challenging, and extraordinary. And then we get the honor of adding little nuances, like I often say, it's Elaine. When somebody gets my name, they say Elaine. So there's little funny, quirky stuff that you can add in as you go. But the foundation that we stand on is the people who create these stories and create these scripts.
Josh said he was going to write that in your intro.
Okay, I'm going to charge you for that, Josh. Sorry.
But you weren't the first person to play Elaine. What's it like inheriting a role originally created for someone else, Maria Friedman?
Well, what's wonderful is she was fantastic, but then a lot of characters have been recreated by lots of other actors. And it's an honor, again, to pick up those reins and bring your own part to it. You know, again, it's not trying to replicate something somebody's already done. It's about breathing life into this character as you. And it's thrilling to do it. And it's exciting.
Last time you were on, we spoke about your formidable career in comedy. How do you think your comedy roots have helped you to refine the character?
My first memory in my life was trying to make my sister laugh when I was about 3. That's the first sort of theatrical memory I have. The joy of taking something often which is dark, but putting a spin on it or adding it to your character to lift the moment is everything. And there are certain things like, if you know, just little things that they do. And that comedy is part of, I think, probably part of who I am. I've always sort of done it in every character I've played, and again, it isn't about being funny. It's just about people in real life. In dark moments, we lift ourselves, That's what comedy is about. Comedy isn't about laughing. It's about identifying when terrible things happen, when somebody trips over, when somebody makes a terrible mistake. If you look at things like Friends, all those characters, it's when they fall apart that we laugh. It's not about them being funny. It's the identification that we get in life.
And I think you need that.
And Josh said he thinks you need those sorts of characters in something like EastEnders to break up the dark scenes.
100%. And that's what, again, the different facets that I can play, from desperate, devastating moments to fantastically funny, is everything. And that's why I'm so lucky to be doing this character and here in EastEnders.
EastEnders has forever sought to push boundaries and reflect social issues reflecting Britain today. Elaine has recently been at the centre of quite an edgy storyline surrounding the double life of her late husband, John, and the shame he suffered due to his homosexuality. What research did you need to do in order to accurately portray this important story?
I didn't need to do research. I know people who've been frightened to come out in life. I was of an era when freedom was just beginning. My mother, Gillian Freeman, wrote a book in the 1960s about working class biker boys who fell in love when it was still illegal to be gay. That was when I was a little girl. And she had a voice for people who didn't have a voice. And the fact that as things have moved forward, again, what was important to me about Elaine was that she didn't have an issue with it. Yes, she was sad her husband fell in love with somebody else, but what she wanted for him was the freedom to honor who he was in this life. And that mattered to me because it's still telling that story, that there is no shame. She hid it in the storyline because he couldn't cope, because he was afraid in that era to acknowledge that he loved another man. And that was a terribly important story to tell because there's a lot of identification. And the research, I grew up, as I said, I remember being on set on The Leather Boys, which then my mother then wrote the movie of her novel. And again, it's in a world where the young people today don't think about those things. But, it's been there from their beginning. But it's important still because people still have issues with it. And it's wonderful to honor my husband and that storyline. So the research was, I grew up in the 80s and very sadly lost a lot of friends of mine to HIV and AIDS. So it has always been part of my life.
Josh says you don't often see storylines that are historical like that.
And that's why EastEnders is so important. Because a lot of the time because it doesn't matter, as I say all the time, whether you're 9 or 90, there is a story for you. And that's why it's so important. Eastenders has a voice, and there's no shame, and it deals with all sorts of extraordinary extremists of issues in real life. And people often say to me in the street, "Oh, thank you so much. That story was so important." You know, all that amazing stuff we did with Yolandi about her abuse. She was abused by a preacher. That story was so important to so many women. You know, again, it matters whether it's the kids taking steroids so they can look better, so they believe they're more valid. It doesn't matter. The story's for everyone in this show, which is why it has the success that it has right now. Because, like I've said before, we reflect our world. That's what the arts has done since the beginning of time. And we still do it.
And it might
This is Josh says it's a microcosm of Britain.
Absolutely. And that's the point. There are so many different families, different issues, different stories. And the multi-layered, multifaceted creation of all those storylines is breathtaking. Because you can't believe we're so involved in the one that we're going through. And then you read the scripts and other people, and you think, how do you? And then we meet in the middle at the pub. You know, that's the brilliant thing about EastEnders.
Yeah. When the great Danny Dyer left the show in 2022, it was unknown what the future held for the character of Linda. How do you think Elaine has suitably filled the void in Linda's life?
It's been so wonderful to come in and play Linda's mother. Again, there's been issues for them both at the beginning. And what you learn is that families are complicated. But ultimately, there's a love there, often, that cannot be broken, and a strength and a value that means everything. And the ongoing storylines just prove that. When Elaine finally calls out Linda on her alcoholism and draws the line and says, "You're not going to stay here if you carry on drinking," was a very powerful moment, because her mother was trying to fix her and help her. And then the line was drawn when she pushed Elaine to the floor and she realized, enough. I'm not going to support you anymore. And that happens in real life. And there's no shame. People don't choose to be alcoholics. It's an illness. So again, to have that extraordinary storyline that she had of her dream sequence, that we thought she'd actually died, and then they brought her, you know, back through the door that same day, and she chose to go to rehab, is such an important thing for people to share and to not be alone with, or feel that you're not doing a good enough job if you can't fix somebody who is an addict.
Away from the overly dramatic moments, EastEnders attempts to create a heightened depiction of domestic life in the East End. In your opinion, how accurately does the show reflect lower middle class life in the East End of London?
It's interesting you should say that, because it's not just lower middle class life, it's life. Families, as I said, are really complicated, and life's a mess. And we make mistakes all the time. And it's wonderful to be able to relay that to everyone. And I think it isn't about nuance and specifics. People get it. That's why the viewing figures are so high. That's why this Christmas was a sensation, you know, and that's wonderful melodrama. But actually, it's Christmas and people row at Christmas. And it's not just lower middle class, it's life in general.
Yeah. When previously talking to the great Tony Jordan, he said that EastEnders is most powerful when it's about clans. How do you think this works in practice?
Clans is an interesting word, because I think it's a sense of honouring friendships, families. And I think it's the truth, isn't it? Friends you stick by, friends who stick by you, and family members who don't. You know, it's very important to relay that.
40 years is a significant landmark for any show, and the BBC always attempts to pull out all the stops to mark a milestone. What can you tell us about the upcoming celebrations?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm sorry, but I can't. You don't
Okay.
pay me enough, or so there we go. But it's I'm just joking. Obviously, it is going to be in every essence the most brilliantly written, explosive story.
Josh, is that it? Is that all we get?
How much money have you got, Josh? What it takes us on is a journey that resolves extraordinary things, like who actually hit Cindy, who do we choose to fall in love with, certain characters. The fact that there's audience participation is the most brilliant, extraordinary thing that Eastenders have done. Nobody else has done that in an ongoing drama. The audience have a share in what happens, and that's thrilling also.
Do you think there'll be more of that in the future?
I should think everyone's going to leap on that bandwagon. Yeah, why wouldn't you?
So the live episode is approaching. In what ways does your experience of live theatre prepare you for something of that magnitude?
Being in the moment and delivering is the most powerful, exciting thing as a performer. The wonderful thing about filming things away is that if you go wrong, you can fix it. The exciting and thrilling thing about doing something live, often shows I've done, you do 8 shows a week, and nothing is ever the same. There's always little moments that are different. And yes, the pressure is huge for people because, a lot of the time people just can't wait to see if people go wrong. But that's not the issue. The issue is having that precious, extraordinary experience of being present in the moment and delivering those amazing stories as those characters. There's nothing like it. It's absolutely unique.
Hello.
Josh asked, how long do you get to rehearse for something like that?
With something like the live, there is obviously preparation and amazing timetabling for everybody. So there is a proper time to rehearse because it's not just the scenes, it's also the technical traveling from studio site to different locations. So it's very, very important, and they do that brilliantly. What's interesting is that live television used to happen all the time. And now it's a unique one-off.
Yeah, the Netflix effect.
Yeah.
Josh said when we spoke to Dame Sheila Hancock, she was saying that at the beginning of her career, nearly everything she did was live, and it's obviously faded away since then to pre-recorded stuff.
Exactly. And there's pros and cons and wonderful things in both. You don't have to choose between one of people often say to me, "Oh, do you like theatre or do you like film?" I love it all because it's my job. And there are different wonderful things in both genres.
So next question, probably you can guess what your answer is going to be. Do you know who attacked Cindy?
Absolutely no idea at all. Thank you for asking.
What do you think the TV landscape would look like without EastEnders?
Empty, lonely, and impossible.
And lastly, what is its legacy?
In what sense?
On the TV landscape?
To have a continuing story for 40 years, where else do you get that opportunity in life? And 3 members have been here since the first episode. It is such a joy, as I said, to keep evolving and having that continuity. And it becomes family, it becomes friends. The legacy is the importance of our mistakes, love, and laughs in life that have been going on with the same people for 40 years. You can't do better than that.